next speaker because I think this is very interesting. We're going to address some of that fake news, some of that intelligence failure analysts. Let's click the record button.
Recording in progress.
Welcome to Australia. I'm very pleased to welcome Mike Godicker, CEO of HackDevNet. HackDevNet is sponsoring this event and many others. It's a pleasure to have you on, and welcome all the way to Australia. How are you doing?
Pretty good. How about you?
Yes, having a great time. Lots of great topics, cyber and physical and current affairs and all sorts of things that are really fascinating.
Yeah, some pretty interesting discussions, especially like the discussions around workplace violence and trying to find those connections to social media, disinformation, etc., because I think they are related. But interestingly enough, there's not a lot of research data out there that attempts to prove this quote unquote wicked problem, as my doctor fathers or advisors keep on telling me. So my name's Mike Godicker. I'm a doctoral researcher for Heriot-Watt University in Edinburgh. I do research on wicked problems such as disinformation, corporate espionage technology, and different types of technologies. And we manufacture products and services that are easy to use, easy to implement, good value for money, and actually protect everything from IoT, smart devices, smartphones, etc., all the way up to the big elephants in the shops, whether it's the servers, whether it's architecture, etc. So today I'm going to take some time to talk about some of the topics that are relevant for this discussion, as they are for every discussion. Some of that is, or especially privacy, the services involved around privacy, supply chain security and risks, the cloud, social media, and how these things play together in the pandemic situations and post-pandemic situations that we're slowly approaching, and what things we can and need to do and focus on to realize what the awareness is of issues that we're dealing with, and how do we use technology and services that we offer and others in point solutions offer as well. So with that, let's start off with what are some of the main issues that we're focusing on. The main issues that we're focusing on are very related to each other, as you can see in these top 3 points with the arrows: social media, open source intelligence, finding out different types of resources that have vulnerabilities and exploits, deepfakes, which is then tied to social engineering, supply chain risks, which is also caused or exacerbated by things like disinformation, fake science, and these different types of things on social media and platforms that make it very easy for hate groups and for interest groups to basically spread fake science, disinformation, fake news, and deepfakes to basically damage society, democracies, the democratic process in various different countries, and form discussions that lead to workplace violence, that also lead to the situation of fatigue that we're hearing in a lot of different ways, shapes, and forms. And they're not really cool, they're not really good, they're not conducive to a very good society in general, and they don't really help us resolve the issues that we're dealing with today as societies and as singular persons, families, etc. So some of the things that we found, and this is still accurate today than it was in April and March, is that since we are dispersed in the way that we're doing business, and the pandemic has forced us to do this, we rely very heavily on using distributed infrastructure in cloud services to do our daily business, to do our remote work, and to basically keep the societies and economies running throughout the world, so that we can do the jobs that we need to do as efficiently as possible without having the spread of viruses and different types of sicknesses and illnesses. And I think this is not going to change anytime soon. So cloud services and the exploitability of these cloud services is a very big, important point to discuss. And this is an important point to discuss because it deals with the supply chain. It deals with how we do business in this society and reality today throughout the world. But it also shows us how a lot of these risks are starting to creep into our normal daily business without many people being aware of this, either as private citizens, as distributed workforces, etc. So Amazon, Google, and Microsoft are some of the 3 top services that we see that are getting used to distribute malware. And I'll get to how that happens right now. So there were some studies that were done from various different agencies out there, and the research is relevant to us because of the applications that we use, the tablets that we use, the dispersed reality that we have today. And one of the ideas in this picture is basically we have 3 different phone systems that were analyzed: Huawei, Xiaomi, and also OnePlus. Unfortunately, OnePlus seems to be a telephone that's very distributed in the security community because it's perceived as being something that's very secured and locked down. The reality is something entirely different. Smartphones, IoT, and embedded devices are the best things since sliced bread for cybercrime syndicates, nation states, and espionage outfits to basically pwn and steal your data. And about 99% of the population isn't even aware that this is going on, that their tablets are basically espionage devices, their smartphones are basically being used against them to spy on them. And there's posts that I've done on LinkedIn to bring this point home. Part of that research is that our biggest issue is that applications are copied from websites that are legitimate, and they're turned into applications that are basically implementing backdoors, malicious code, etc. And they basically capture your keyboard strokes, your video and audio files, and they basically send these to third-party solutions that are in countries that are not applicable to the European data privacy laws, Australian and the US and California data privacy laws. And this is a big issue. It's a big issue because people aren't aware of this, because they either don't want to deal with it because it's too complex for them, or most of the 99% of the solutions out there don't address the actual problem. We do, and I'll get to that later. So why is this an issue? Why are pwned, exploited applications an issue? So we deal with GSM smart devices and mobile phones, whether they're IoT, critical infrastructure or not, based on the devices that we use. These devices install trackers and traced apps that basically leverage a collection of information from password logons, which is legal, by the way, all the way up to more analytics by Google Analytics, which is why we block them in our products. Activities, private information that's privacy relevant, as well as locations. And these things are relevant because this information is parked on servers that are usually vulnerable because they're rented from the cheapest place of hosters that are out there. They all are not doing their business, and they're not paying attention to the customers that are using their services. So for us, this is an issue because we have to wind up blocking Google, we have to wind up blocking Microsoft servers, and we have to wind up blocking a lot of servers that other applications use that may or may not be legitimate, but we have to flag them and block them because they're being used in espionage services like Pegasus and other things. And since you, the user, don't control this and you're not aware of this, it'll break some of the sites that we're using, and it stops or it builds a reluctancy to enforce security when we should be doing this, and we should be pressuring all these different companies to say, listen, if you don't do your job, which is, by the way, illegal, and you're required by law in many different nations to do this, if you don't do it, we're going to boycott your service. We're not going to use Facebook. We're not going to use Twitter. We're not going to use Instagram and WhatsApp. You need to deal with these security issues first before we're going to even use your services. And if you don't do this, you won't make money. Hence, you have a very vested interest to do this. So these servers are breached. They spy on users. They implement and create breaches. They install spyware. They have command and control servers. You name it. And since they look legitimate, most companies out there are not blocking this, and we do. I guess we're the only ones in the world that do this. I don't know why. Maybe everyone else doesn't want to deal with this issue, or they're not even aware of it. But unfortunately, since we do the research and security, we have to do this because apparently no one else is doing this. So why do we do this? Because data, information, IP theft, ransomware, infections, and all kinds of things happen, and people don't even know or are aware that this is going on. So when you work for a security outfit, a cybersecurity company, an application company, basically you're part of the intel that's getting spilled out to third parties and to nation states like China, Russia, and all other countries that do this, as well as the cybercrime syndicates. It's a big issue. The second thing is part of the way of how this spreads and creates hate, violence at the workplace, as well as using disinformation to create hysteria, and also to basically shut off the logic that we use in assessing what information we're doing. Now, there are nation states and cybercrime and interest groups and proxies that use fake science and disinformation to create these very solutions. They look like academic journals. In reality, they are so far from being academic, it's not even funny. But people trust these things because they look academic, they mimic this. They sometimes copy Harvard and other universities to make them look like they're legitimate when in reality they're not. The second thing is they're parked on servers that are known to host malware, they are known to have bad reputations, and they're attacking sources. Again, the hosters aren't interested in doing this because all they're apparently interested in is making money, and it creates a solution, or it creates a problem that needs a solution. So I'm going to show a short video why this is relevant, how this happens, to set the correct context.
When people think of cybersecurity, they think of computers, smartphones, tablets, IoT devices, and other electronic components. And then they think of the cyber attacks that can compromise or destroy the services and/or these gadgets. But security is much more comprehensive. It includes many different aspects, such as physical security. With most people getting their news from websites or social media, the way that people have digested information and gotten the situation of any given moment in time has relied on many new channels of information. With these new channels of information, it has unfortunately now become easier more than ever to spread propaganda, false information, fake news, and other types of disruptive media to the masses. Unfortunately, this can be done to disrupt the political system, a nation, an interest group, or anything else in order to influence dissent, create disruptions for a certain political party or an interest group, or simply to change the dynamic of a country and get them prepared for an invasion. These types of systems and the way that they are used to disseminate propaganda are becoming more and more dangerous. And unfortunately, many new generations that are depending on these new types of social media and different types of electronic information do not understand a lot of the risks involved in what is propaganda and disruptions from different enemy nation states. Unfortunately, this avenue is a relatively cheap and low-risk form of warfare, which is comprised of hybrid warfare that uses non-traditional ways to wage warfare in the electronic age. This is why it is now the #1 tool used against political adversaries and other types of adversaries against an interest group or a nation state. It can be very easy and as basic as creating creative news or fake news stories online on numerous social media platforms and blogs. This piece of information, or these numerous social media platforms and blogs, are used to create a narrative that is not the truth. It can also be more complex, such as sending disruptors to hijack peaceful protests and also turn them into violent riots. Riots that can completely decouple a normal way of life in a given nation state. The examples of these are more than prevalent in the news today and in you, the reader or viewer's mind. We only need to take a look at some of the things about Black Lives Matter and these different types of platforms being misused by various different nation states to coordinate violent activities. The only way that you can detect that either you or your company or your country are targeted is to collect information using the information lifecycle or intelligence lifecycle to understand what it is that you're looking at how these things are coordinated, and how to compare what fake is in relation to the truth. This is becoming much more difficult today than it was in the past. We have to filter out information that is propaganda, or at the very least is not telling us what is really happening, but is shaping a fake narrative and turning it into what people are starting to believe as reality. We have to find credible sources of data, information, and constantly fact check them against everything that we read, see, hear, or view on the internet. Think of a world where you cannot trust any major news source or any type of online media in any way, shape, or form. Think about what that society is like, not trusting what you see, hear, or can view. We are very close to living in that world right now. What can we do about it? We need to take cybersecurity and defense seriously now before it's too late. And we also need to make sure that the entire world knows what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. We need to improve our cyber defenses by thinking critically and by having ways and solutions that help us determine what is the truth and what isn't the truth. Fake news, propaganda, and hybrid warfare only lead down one road, the road to our destruction. This is not acceptable. HackDevNet, protecting lives and companies.
Okay, excuse me. So, intelligence lifecycle, collecting information, turning that into intelligence, excuse me, fake facts and excuse me, deep fakes. The other thing that we also have is that this information and these tactics are being deployed in what we call proxy warfare. So that means you have a nation state that uses a proxy that does the attack. This is part of the overall hybrid warfare cycle that we're in, that uses Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, and all these different types of, or Snapchat, all these different types of social media outlets, because they're very easy to disseminate disinformation, propaganda, and wage informational warfare. And we are in a cycle of hybrid warfare since 2015, at least, and it's getting worse. The reason why it's getting worse is because social media platforms are more interested in making money off of advertisers that they don't vet, rather than doing the things that they're responsible for doing by law. And there's not enough people that are consistently checking and tracing this, that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. So it adds to the issues. We have different ways of collecting information and trying to find out if we know what we know is relevant or not. But a lot of issues that we deal with are the disinformation that we also see in the security industry. About 99% of all the solutions that are out there, the first thing they're saying is they have AI, artificial intelligence. I'm unfortunately here as a researcher basing that research on facts that artificial intelligence doesn't exist. Despite what you hear, despite what you read, artificial intelligence doesn't exist. It's not a thing. At the most, what we have is machine learning. Machine learning works in a very finite way. It's an algorithm that can be taught to find certain things, but it has its limitations, and it has big limitations. So the reason for that is simple. We have two different ways in that we do research at a macro level. We have quantitative, which means we're looking at things that are published facts, that there's research, there's algorithms we can use to collect data, that we know where to collect the data, what kind of data it is, what the relevancy is. We can score this, and we can use those scores to do some type of automation. The other type of information is qualitative. And qualitative, just as it is for doctors and DBAs to do their research, is extremely difficult, because qualitative means you're dealing with emotions, you're dealing with the reality or the perception of reality of things or a given problem. And while you're dealing with reality, it means that you're dealing with cultural factors, you're trying to interpret how something may or may not be relevant, and there's no algorithm currently right now in machine learning that can accurately use this type of technology because it's not a human. It's not a human brain with its pros and cons, and it doesn't know its own reality. And that's one of the definitions of what artificial intelligence basically is. We need something as paradoxical as the human brain to interpret things in any given environment and use that information in the intelligence life cycle to then come to conclusions based on the use case that makes sense and that can be measured and proven that it works. So we have 50% of a given issue that we're dealing with. It has to be defined, and when it's defined as narrowly as possible, then we can start automating it. Things that are not quantitative are almost impossible, or are impossible for machine learning to find, because it's a very big environmental problem that deals with soft factors that cannot be programmed in an algorithm currently right now. And reality is, a lot of things are always both. There's a mixture of quantitative and qualitative in every use case we have, and every problem we're trying to solve, and every issue we're trying to resolve as well. So what does it mean? The three things in red, machine learning and artificial intelligence, when we finally do have it, they encode the correlation to specific things, but they don't show the causes or the relationship of these things between themselves and between different levels of reality. That's an issue, because then you only have a very specific picture of a problem, and it may be totally off, which is the reason why threat feeds and artificial intelligence solutions don't really work the way they're supposed to, or the way you hope they do. The second thing is, it's not well suited for high level or symbolic reasoning or planning, because humans can do that, and awareness-based intelligence can do that, but artificial intelligence can't, because it's not aware of itself, it's not aware of its pros and cons, and it can't reason the way a human brain can. Lastly, because we have these 2 points, we can't really use artificial intelligence and machine learning to secure the supply chain or an environment, because these problems are wicked or too complex. Why is this a problem? Well, reality has multiple dimensions. These multiple dimensions, they influence each other at the same dimension, but they also influence each other in different dimensions. This is just a very scientific way of saying the environment and reality is complex, is built up in multiple dimensions, and anytime you want to choose an algorithm to find out what reality is, the limitations are that it can only look at something in the layer that it's in. It can't look at the whole picture. If you can't look at the whole picture, you don't know how one thing, for instance, a CVE on a server that has a tracker or tracer on your mobile phone, is relevant for a nation state that's trying to spy on you, to use that information about your logons, emails, and passwords to break into your network because you work for the industrial defense complex, or you work for an intelligence agency, or you're the CEO of a company, and someone wants to steal your product and discredit you to make you look like a fake, so they can steal all your revenue and your employees and the research that you've done. So what are we trying to do, or what do we do with our solutions? We want to make sure awareness is there, that you have better choices, and that you make better choices based on the information that you have in front of you. In short, connecting the dots. How are things that are relevant from multiple dimensions and layers relevant for you? What can or cannot not do? How do we use the intelligence lifecycle to prove that use cases may be relevant or valid for you? And how do we use that information to stop attacks and defend? So, in one hand, a lot of the companies out there, they concentrate on IOCs, indicators of compromise. And this complex diagram is just saying there are a lot of different factors in IOCs, but the biggest problem with IOCs is that they have a very limited shelf life. They're interesting for me as a researcher to find out who attacked you, why they're attacking you, and what factors do we have in those attacks. For instance, is it a country, an interest, or a target that's represented by something specific? Can we track these things? Do we know what code is being used? Is the attack detectable? Does the attack code rewrite itself? Is it dynamic, or does it use side channels? All these different things go into IOCs, but the big problem with an IOC is that it has a shelf life of a few minutes, maybe an hour, maybe at the most a few hours. But then the IOC is invalid, it doesn't make any more sense, it won't stop the attack because things constantly change. Reality is dynamic, we have emotions, we have cultures, and that's why artificial intelligence machine learning only does certain things. So you can use it for finite things, you cannot use it for infinite things. So what are we doing to stop this problem? It starts off by managing your assets in a very easy and simple form. What firewalls, what agents do you have that are blocking and stopping and detecting attacks? What kind of endpoints do we help you secure? Your smartphones against trackers, against tracers, against these malicious code backdoors in your phones that you're not even aware of that are trying to install things on you without you being aware of it. Start with making that easy and simple. Secondly, create one rule or two rules tops for IP version 4, IP version 6 and domains that we know are malicious based on our intelligence and our resources. We correlate these things to all the open source intelligence that's out there, and then we combine all that stuff together into a realistic list. So one of the things I get talked about or asked a lot of times by most companies is, Mike, your solution's good. Why do we need it? We have open source intelligence. Well, open source intelligence is not the same thing as dedicated research into specific problems and knowing the attackers. Open source intelligence gives you maybe 20 to 30% of the information you need, but about 60 to 70% of that is false positives and information that's rather questionable. So when you use open source intelligence in lists that you get off the internet, it only has a very specific shelf life. It only has a very specific value. The value that you get from our solutions is enhancing all this stuff with actual intelligence, tracking and tracing the groups, understanding the attacks, and turning that into 1 to 2 rules that you can use for your firewall, for the agents, and also for our endpoint solutions that integrate risk intelligence into things like VPN proxies and does everything automatically on a device without you having to worry about this. So use automation where it makes sense. Concentrate on the things where you cannot automate and where you need human folks. Secondly, integrate things like vulnerability management and risk reporting in a very simple, easy manner. Just go to the website, check out your IP. If you want us to scan your IP, if we find CVEs or exploitable components, we'll let you know. If you want details, you pay for a report. It's risk-free, doesn't cost that much money, and you don't need Qualys, you don't need OpenVAS, you don't need Nessus, you don't have to buy thousands and thousands of dollars of servers and equipment. We can do all this stuff from our technology that's patent pending and trademarked, and we can do all this stuff for you. We don't collect your information, we just do the things you allow us to do, and you get results very quickly. Simple. Why do we do this? We need to concentrate on using our resources for the things that we actually need folks for. Next point. So you have a firewall, or you don't have a firewall. You're on the road. You may not have a VPN. You want to do something simple. You want to stop all the attacks from getting to your client, your Mac laptop, or your Windows laptop 10 or 11, or your Android phones, etc. Then we have the SCA agents for clients and endpoints. You can block these attacks from happening. It will break some websites because they do illegal activity, but since you're not even aware of this, you won't even know that these websites, like Facebook is using something called the Facebook Pixel, which tracks all your information. It sells it to third-party suppliers that you don't control, and they start gathering this intelligence to hit you with advertising, with malware, with backdoors, etc. It's illegal. It shouldn't be happening. It's unacceptable, but you're not aware of this because you want to use Facebook, but you're not aware of the risks of using this. Not because I'm saying this, but because these things are doing illegal things that are dangerous. So the last point, you have a smartphone. You don't want to install our agent. You still want to be protected. We have the Endpoint Security solution, which uses open source software like OpenVPN, which integrates all our technology in the background without you having to waste your time about the technical mumbo jumbo and magic that we're doing, but it still protects you on your phone. And it encrypts your traffic so that no one can attack you as easily. You can go to a cafe, you can go wherever you need to go, and you're still protected. But by the way, it also does all the stuff that the firewall and the endpoint does automatically on your smartphones and IoT devices. It makes it simple, it makes it easy, it integrates all this stuff without you having to waste your time and having a team to do this. It lets you concentrate on business and on doing the things that are important and matter the most. It's very easy to implement. Within 2-3 minutes, you're up and running and you're protected. So I would normally show another video here, but I think I'm going over my time. So I won't show this video right now, unless Phelim, you tell me I have some more time.
We're kind of over a little bit too much, yeah.
All right, so then I'm going to stop here and I'll open it up to questions.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks very much. Really, really new information for me as well, and I know I've been learning a lot from you. Simon in the audience says, if you are targeted by a state actor, isn't that essentially game over?
No, it's not. Because the first answer to that question is all of us are targeted. So just because you're targeted doesn't mean that we have a victimization type of approach, which means I can't do anything. I might as well just surrender. The thing is, you have corporations that are doing this, and you have nation states that are doing this. But these nation states, they use Facebook, they use Twitter, they use these different things on your smartphone to spy on you. And since social media is not using their responsibility and their legal requirements to block this stuff, we have to do this. So, but it goes even further than that. I mean, think about your kids, about your family. Everyone that uses social media and applications and is not aware of the risks involved with this and the illegal criminal activities that corporations are doing, they're open to this stuff and you lose control. You don't know what's going on. You don't know who uses this information. So let's use this point, and then let's put the next layer on top, deepfakes. So if anyone captures an audio file of you, a video or something else, and they really hate you, they'll create a video or an audio file that'll make it look like you did something that's derogatory, that's hateful, that's for an interest group, if you're a politician, etc. They'll make you look bad. So the thing is, we have to react proactively because surrendering isn't an option. And if we surrender, nothing changes. The only thing that does change is that we lose control, what little control we have, and we need to take back that control. So the victimization and surrendering doesn't really solve the issue, it just makes it worse.
I like it. And of course that deepfake thing makes me really worried about the podcast that I've done. Anyway.
I'm worried too, but I mean, you know, we have to deal with this because it's a thing.
It is. It is. Well, how can people then engage you and Hack DevNet? You know, there's going to be people who are in the cyber world. It's pretty obvious how they would engage you, but people in the corporate security world probably say, "Oh, I'm sure the IT folks will sort this out for me," and it's not really the case. You know, you have a personal budget for your own security. How can they engage you?
I think the easiest way to do this is just to test us out. You know, test if we're actually doing what we say we're doing. You know, take a 30-day test. Send me an email, and if you could post the email, mike@hackdevnet.org, and the website. You can order off the website. It's very easy. We can also talk proactively to you, and we can make an appointment. It's very easy to order the solutions. They're good value for money. And you know, if you have a budget that's lower, or you're an educational institution or something else, let's talk. It makes more sense to talk and to do something proactively than to not react and to wait for something to resolve itself, because it's not going to solve, this issue is not going to resolve itself. And that was the main reason why I created these products. I started with myself. I was fed up with getting phishing emails, getting videos and audio files that were attempting to breach our systems and our customer systems. And I just said enough was enough, you know. So, and I think some of the best solutions are out there. The use cases are when you build this stuff to protect yourself and your family. It makes a lot more sense. You know, we're not a venture capitalist company that is invested by folks that just want to sell the company. I started with solving an issue. And I do research on this issue for the last 20 plus years. So it's a difference. It means a lot more to the solution, but it also means a lot more to engaging and just, starting the discussion.
It all starts with the discussion, and that's what we're trying to do. Visit hackdefnet.org. I put it in the chat there, and email mike@hackdefnet.org, and just find a time because you will learn a lot, and it's to be recommended. Mike, we are now over time. Thank you to you, to HackDefnet. Welcome. Nice you could join Australia, which is quite a good thing.
Thank you very much for your time, and for the audience, I really appreciate it, and I'm honored to talk here. I hope someone has taken something along, and thank you for everything you do for the community and spreading awareness. It's very, very important. Thank you.